Okay.
So, good afternoon, Aristo.
Good morning, Ron. It's good to see you again on this fine Saturday. I guess we're on the same day, even though we're not on the same hour.
Well, no, it's actually Friday, but this will
Oh,
show
yeah.
on Saturday.
Saturday, yeah. Well,
Yeah, it's 8:24 a.m. on Friday morning, my time, and probably about 6 or 7 hours later on your time.
3:24.
3:24. So, okay. That's 9 hours difference, actually.
Yeah, daylight savings time. It flips from 8 to 9.
Okay, that's what it was. Yeah.
Is it?
Anyway, we won't get into the time thing. I think we did that last week. All right, we just did, but not about Australia. Anyway,
Let me just throw a title at you today. It hasn't been easy this time because I more or less have finished with the whole yoga thing, and as far as it will go, I could go into greater detail, but at this point, it seems that the feedback that's coming through is along the lines of, well, we're here, that what you're suggesting, however simple you put it or whatever, because somebody asked for a list of things to do, and that's why I wrote, what I did write on the PDFs. They can look at that. It's impossible to put this in a 1, 2, 3, but I understand people's frustration. You yourself said that it's difficult to have patience. And this is much like weightlifting. You've seen those old advertisements, the little wimpy guy on the beach, the big guy kicks sand in his face, and then he goes and does the Mr. Atlas program.
Or eats a can of spinach.
The can of spinach, that's the myth. It's probably some drug from the GMO thing. But, in the real world, he goes and exercises and eats right and eats a lot of spinach. And over months, he comes back, as bigger than the guy who tried to beat him up. So the point is, in any situation, things take time to mature. And this is what's going on with the global situation. So I wanted to address the more immediate issues of the crisis because I feel that no matter what we're experiencing on the outside of things going on, progressions, this, that, and the other, it pays for us to be stronger. And if there's a way to make us stronger on the inside, then we can help things on the outside much better in ways that we may not know at this time because we don't have the internal resources, the strength to perceive it. I mean, it may not be anything metaphysical or anything, but simply our minds are too worried and anxious and feeling weak to even see something that's in front of our face or discern it correctly.
And your title is?
My title is, In the Meantime, 3 dots, Stand Up, exclamation point.
All right.
And the basis of this title is very similar to something from the Bible. When Jesus went to the cripple and healed him, he said, stand up and walk. He did not say walk. Standing up is an important part of the process of getting anywhere. A journey of 1,000 miles starts with the first step, but before you take that step, you have to stand up. And I believe that the problems we face are difficulties in standing up. We feel we can't get anywhere with ourselves and with each other, and even in taking that so-called first step. I mean, simply knowing what's going on, even that seems to be confusing us because we're not sure we know what's going on. We get a lot of different stories and the details of what's going on and what's going to happen, but still we're not sure. And our spine is basically paining us. We're stressing because we're having difficulty standing up. And standing up means standing in your own integrity no matter what's going on around you. And I'm not talking about being shot or the critical or the end or whatever, where things go too far. I mean realistically where the majority of us are. Most people, in one way or another, whether they agree with it or not, have the sword of Damocles hanging over their head. It's a mythological sword that was up there, and one day it was going to fall on somebody, but they never knew who it was going to fall on, or, basically it was going to kill the children of somebody, and I don't know what. But it's basically a threat. And it's a threat that may come to pass, it may not come to pass. There are no guarantees. There are no guarantees either way. That's the only type of certainty that upon which we can agree, realistically, so to speak. So
Let me talk for a minute. All right.
Yes.
Because the camera stopped recording me. The light's on, but it is picking the microphone and it still is working. Okay. And that's what I wanted to do a test and why I'm talking right now. So thank you. Continue, please. And I'm sorry for the interruption.
Oh, no problem. See, as you said before, why can't we get on the same page? And there are many things going on. And along with this issue of not being able to get on the same page, there's the issue of all the personal problems you mentioned, of actually suffering, in your own situation. You suffered with the police coming to your door and all of that, and then you're watching similar situations going on with loved ones. And in many ways, a lot of people are trying to tell us to be impersonal, to stand back, to observe, to not be involved. And it's like when you're empathic or when you love people, that's impossible. I mean, that's what it means. Even if you love them unconditionally, it still becomes personal, unconditionally personal. So how to deal with all these situations? I had sent you something about Bill Cooper. I found, some of the things, his own theories. And I believe that way back when, before there was a chance in the mass media in the alternative media and the internet for all these varying theories and explanations and everything to come through, Bill Cooper was one of the few people who basically had a coherent rendition of conspiracy theory which wasn't a theory. I mean, it's been verified today. And the guy didn't have any psyops against them. What they did was harass him over and over again. He moved his family to Europe. He was all alone with his dog. And people who knew him said he became angrier and angrier. And cops kept harassing him continuously for minor infractions or no infraction at all. And on the fated day, and the guy was talking about that something is going to happen in September of 2001. And I guess in August or something of 2001 or July, he did some minor infraction again, some misdemeanor, maybe a traffic ticket, I don't know. But all of a sudden, a bunch of cops, were in front of his property. And the guy, he was drinking a lot, he was depressed, and, very, very angry with all of this, and he didn't trust anybody. So he just got fed up and ran through the blockade. And he almost ran over a cop. So he made it to his property, got in, and all the cops just came back, guns blazing, following him. He pulled out his rifle and said from his house that you are illegally trespassing on my property, and I will shoot you. And he did shoot at them or in the air. And this was all from the police report. So this is their rendition. And so, he was defending his property. And all of a sudden, because he had a gun and because he shot it, they came in and gunned him down. So this is a plausible story, even though who knows what the cops would, write up in their report. They could say anything. But it parallels what happened to you. What would have happened in your case if you pulled out a gun and told the cop, you're trespassing on my property, I'm going to shoot you, Or, if you did shoot in the air even, the cop would have killed you. The same thing with anybody else. My point is, it's not a matter of, the rights or no rights and all of that. It's what was going on within the person. And I believe Mr. Cooper, regardless of the situation, collapsed under his own weight. That inside he was saying, I can't take this anymore, just end it, forget it. My will to live, my will to survive is there, but my will to live doesn't seem justification. He would look at all the other areas of the burgeoning alternative media, and he would see, shills of the establishment, whether they were or not. My take is that, the establishment in, the mid-90s, in the 80s, would kill people at the drop of a hat who came up with this stuff. And in the 90s, they started a counter-propaganda program. And then eventually, If I was them, I would infiltrate the alternative media first, just as it was coming up. So, it's not just paranoia, it's how they operate. But in any case, that still puts us in a difficult position. So I want to get into another parable here, another story that I happened to read last night, coincidentally, synchronistically. And this is about how the Renaissance Hermetic alchemists came about and the order of the Rosy Cross or the Rosicrucians that are talked about. And some say they're, holy or establishment or whatever. But it's very simple. In 1610 or something like that, all of a sudden, there were a bunch of people who were into philosophical stuff, into alchemy, defying the church, that was when first people started officially using chemistry to heal other people. And there was many things happening, many things in occultism, and mysticism was on the rise in Europe. And then all of a sudden, these sages, these people who were respected in the community because they were wise, got a pamphlet. They each got a pamphlet, or it was set up publicly, that these great teachers are coming out now from the ancient times, and they're organizing the great society. Come one, come all, and write yourselves up into this great secret society that's going to change the world. We will heal the world, and we will bring the Christ consciousness and all of this. And these people were tremendously enthused, and the great Savior is coming. Come and support the Savior. Get together. But it was put in such a way that it was almost, it was fantastical. However, people still expected, because the person said, well, in 3 months' time, the Savior will show up. All of you come together and talk about this and, discuss how we're going to proceed. The people waited. They talked and debated, but they still waited, and nobody came. About 6 months after, then half of them said it was a fraud. The other half said, have faith. A third party said, let's go seek them out. But about 6 months later, some more pamphlets came out describing more mythological things that were even more outlandish, about sages from the Orient with psychic abilities and this and that and the other. Many people still believe this is true, but what came out later was that there was a Lutheran pastor who got so fed up with the following situation. In his day, he figured out there were tons of wise people, all working independently. And, on alchemy, on the philosopher's stone, on social reform, on raising the consciousness of the people, on democratic principles, and against the kings and against the church and all of this. So why can't all these people get together and pool their resources and come up with something that's practical? So he set this thing out to get them all in one place and get them debating and get them talking about it. And he figured these people were so intelligent they would figure out that this was a ploy, that there was no Savior coming for them to organize them. They could organize themselves. They had the ability. If they could do all of these tremendous hermetic, unearth ancient wisdoms and alchemical stuff and this and that, and predict the future and advise kings and bring up democratic principles again and defy the church. If they could do all this, and many of them could do it and get away with it, because they did it covertly or diplomatically or this and that, then why couldn't they figure out that he was just playing them for a good cause? And later, the pastor himself came up and admitted this. But again, this isn't, this is said to be a theory and a fraud as well. So, things get confused. My point is that eventually Rosicrucian movements took advantage of the myth and came up and did organize, and many did follow mystical principles. And at the same time, the establishment hijacked a lot of these, and you had a whole bunch of occult brotherhoods come up, and these occult brotherhoods were hijacked by MI6, by the British intelligence agency, the German, the French, the Russian intelligence agency, and it all became a stupid game. And today, many people go into these organizations, and again, you don't know what's really going on. Most people who go in really, you're still low on the ladder and this, that, and the other. My point is that the pastor had his heart in the right place, and it was actually a very good thought, but people, for some reason, could not get beyond the need, on the one hand, for an authority, and it was understandable then because everybody had kings, everybody had, a church in some way. Alchemy started from paganism, but all of a sudden, the way we know it today, it's all about Christianity. So it cannot be ancient wisdom. Everything evolves. Everything transforms. Sometimes the gist is lost, sometimes it's regained. But the point is, for me, what is the best position we can have as individuals in the face of all of this? Because one thing we need to know the nature of our challenge. It's not about putting in my opinion, it's not about putting all of your chips in who is the true Savior or who is telling the truth or what is really going on. I looked at Karen Huda's video a little bit, and there's a few things, just 5 minutes here and there, and, she's basically saying the same thing, she's not really a whistleblower, in my opinion. She's repeating stuff. The only whistleblowing is her credentials. Basically saying, well, all of these other people have been saying it, I'm just reaffirming this. And then emphasizing the actions of certain factions. Whereas all of these factions, they're all over the place. All of them are authoritarians. Some of them are less crazy than others. Some of them may have a certain sense of reform. This is true. But in any case, we cannot be sure. And even if we're not sure, the whole point is we can discern what they promote, the best aspects of what they promote. Because this is what the current Rosicrucians, the ones that aren't manipulated, let's say, have done from the other stuff. They've taken all of the frauds, all of the hearsay, all of the ancient writings, and they intuited the best of it. They distilled it, and they worked with what they distilled. And if something didn't work, they dropped it and changed it and moved again. And if somebody becomes stubborn and says, no, this is the way it is, then somebody else comes in and says, no, let's try something different. They experimented with the ideas, in other words. And they worked with each other, and if one group, for example, says, well, I disagree with you, let's do it the other way, then these people can put their heads together and find what the best way is. For example, nobody that I know gets together and, says basically, okay, we have all of these disagreements. Where do we agree? Well, we agree on common law. We agree on the fact that a society, however we're going to run it, cannot give all of its power to a single authority or an authoritative group. The temptation for the group is just too much unless the issue of psychopathy has been resolved. And I don't see the issue of psychopathy across the board being resolved once and for all, anytime immediately. I would say it can be resolved anytime soon, but as this thing is coming together, so that resolution is going to be cooking through the events, in my view. So people can get together and figure out basic principles. That's the one thing. Even though the Founding Fathers were also manipulated or in cahoots or whatever, they still managed to squeeze out certain basic principles that may not have, that didn't fully work because it wasn't a pure thing. There was a corruption in the intentions. Even Thomas Jefferson said, well, we got to civilize the Native Americans or else we're going to just kill them all, And they didn't really emphasize that slavery, well, you're a hypocrite if you still keep slaves. Oh, it was just a day. But that's really no excuse. It's as much an excuse as the Nazis had about, oh, I was just following orders. Or, I'm just doing the best I can, where, no, obviously not, if the compromise is so great. However, today we have the benefit of hindsight. So we can take the best of a libertarian U.S. system and combine it with the best of a system that promotes a social safety net, as you have said. And we can combine it with the best of attitudes that promote wisdom and strength and psychological integrity and the ability to not be fooled, of deconditioning. All of these things can come into play. At this point, the best we can do is first aid on ourselves, because there's a lot of work that needs to be done, and I admit I've attempted to condense something that will give people tremendous power. The power of gnosis is tremendous because as you cultivate it, it opens your horizons to new insights about what to do and how to, perceive the situation and what your strengths are, even to the point of getting inklings of what you mentioned about your true name. So, but still, that is a slightly slow process. It's a gradual one. So you need time and you need a certain sense of what to do with the sword of Damocles, because you can, it may not fall and kill you, but it seems to be getting longer and longer and stretching, so you keep cutting yourself slightly up against it. All of these instances that are super critical are actually tiny cuts compared to what's planned, in the minds of psychopaths. So the point is how to both avoid it and how to deal with it in the immediate, and at the same time cultivate conditions that will facilitate action without rushing, without freaking out, and without, if you really want to interject, I have no clue about your body language at this point, so just feel free.
I'm good. Just keep going.
Okay. So the point is that the important thing at this point is before we can get anywhere, we have to make sure our feet are planted on the ground and our head is held as high as possible and our eyes are looking toward the horizon and at the same time aware of everything that's in front of our face. And this is not as easy as it sounds. And it may be disappointing or depressing in the sense that, well, I got so far to go, or there's so much to do, or things seem so, not hopeless, but unpredictable or uncertain. We're so used to certainty, and the one reason people attach to saviors is because the savior promises certainty. And I believe that we can be, and even Peter Van Ryn has said this, be comfortable in uncertainty. It's not going to kill you. It's not a threat. What's a threat is the false certainty that somebody else is trying to replace and pass off as your uncertainty. The storyline of the bad things that are happening. And then something does happen. It is attracted in our venue. And instead of taking advantage of it, it crushes us. So whenever there's a resistance or a pressure, think of it as a weight that you can actually use to strengthen yourself as long as you have the sense that you have the leeway to regulate it. And it's similar to what happened, in your situation with the police. If Bill Cooper had a little bit more patience and could open up to his anger and accept it, if he could accept the situation of this is how bad it feels, but if I just give in to how bad it feels, then they've won. As much as the pressure seems, I'm creating storylines of the future that, even if everybody in the alternative media, everybody else is a shill, there are honest people out there or I would be talking. Even if everybody is asleep, they can wake up because I've woken up. If it happened to me, it can happen to them. We're not a different species. We're all humans. So the sense was that he didn't act in a way that was able to sustain everything that was being thrown at him because he was being attacked. He was being harassed. His family was being threatened. And and even his Christianity, his belief in God and all of this didn't help him because he believed that the only power was the power of the gun, of revolution, and the legal power. And the legal, because he said there are two paths, basically. The path of the revolutionary, take up arms and just strike, or the path of the patriot, do it through peaceful and legal means. But, he wanted, but peaceful and legal means basically take a far longer time to actualize than the revolutionary path. Even though the revolutionary path is much more dangerous and is more likely to throw out the baby with the bathwater. So, but he felt that there was so much injustice that it just kept eating at him. In your case, You went along with the situation. You were like the willow, that the tree that the wind blows, but it bends and it doesn't break. They almost broke your arm and they wounded your ego and it was horrendous and you were traumatized, but eventually you got over it, and it tempered your whole scenario because you had personal experience. You know, when you go through a situation like that, there is no way you can be a spiritual bypass person, you know, unless you're completely in denial and you shut yourself off. You know, you have to basically kill your conscience or close your heart up, and that's contradictory to what they're claiming to do. But the whole point is that something comes in small enough doses that it will test us, and the only reason we're tested is if we weren't tested, what will we do? Somewhere in our lives, we're not fully involved in our own being regarding the situation. It doesn't matter about, you know, for me, it's not about joining groups so much, although that is one option, and it's a viable one, as much as the critical point is, what is your relationship with yourself? Are you really true to your principles? And some people who are escapists are true to their principles. They basically say, well, the only way we're going to get out of this is if, you know, people change consciousness, and I don't have any ability to do anything, so I'm going to sit back and observe and give people some peace. And that's fine. My problem with such people is trying to convince everybody else to do it. In small doses, even those kinds of people are, you know, something healthy in homeopathic doses. But my sense of spirituality is not peace, in the sense, because that's, for me, is mental relaxation, physical relaxation. It's good, but it's not spirituality. For me, spirituality is passion. It means that the life force is moving within you, and you can be completely still, and your passion can be a presence, or you can be moving with it, and your passion can be a dynamic mobilization. So passion is creation for me. I don't believe in creation without passion. I don't believe in the Illuminati scientific version of creation that's clinical or experimental or, you know, let's try this or poke that, or impersonal. I believe that creation itself, there's no way that any kind of super or omni-divinity could be impersonal and detached from their creation. It's part of them. And that is a mystical truth. Any mystic, you know, worthy of the name, at least will agree on that. So how can we detach from it? But when we're attached, then there are resources. These are the gifts of grace. And the gifts of grace activate when we are true to ourselves. And we are true to ourselves when our beliefs don't crush us. When our assumptions don't crush us, because we are not meant to be crushed. We have a spine. We are meant to stand up. We are meant to stand up. We are meant to be erect. So for me, the primary issue, if anybody feels confusion, is to open up to the feeling of confusion and to open up to their own passion to do something about it. The cops come at your door and harass you. They'll be there, then they'll leave, and they'll say, we're going to come back. Well, in the interim where they just make you sit there and stew and worry about it, you get passionate. You discover your desire to be free. You don't sit back and say, well, in this world, we can't do what we want. We're slaves. We're this, that, and the other. No, other people are calling us slaves, and we're agreeing with them. That's the situation. The only way you can get to the journey of liberation is to stand up and be free first. It may not seem like freedom to anybody or on the outside because you're not going anywhere. You're learning to stand up. Appreciate the value of being in your space and intending what you want. I read in one of these Rosicrucian things, in fact, that said the Lord's Prayer is not really a prayer because God knows what you want already. You know, you don't have to pray to God, you know, and God doesn't need your show of solidarity in prayer. God knows your heart already. Just be yourself. The Lord's Prayer is actually a guide toward how to live your life. It begins with our Father, not my Father, you know, and bringing heaven on earth. And as I move to do what I need to do to remain alive in this world, I will release my debts in order for others, for my debtors not to have any effect on me. And I will open up to the possibility and the desire and the grace that protects me from evil. All of these things are internalized actions. And it's a basic mode of conduct, as you said, that it's not really the Lord's Prayer, it's the, disciple prayer, or the prayer of the people who set out for a purpose. So prayer for me is not so much asking for something, it's a connection. And once that connection is felt, in whatever way you can feel it, you don't have to be a yogi or whatever, but you can just basically open up to your sense of it, and anybody can feel. And it doesn't even have to be religious. Just open up to the sense that there is such a thing as evolution, as a purpose. Life has a purpose. We human beings, we die when we lose the sense that life has a purpose. And the purpose doesn't mean an end game. It just means it's meaningful. It means that it's worth it. If Bill Cooper lost his sense that life was worth it, it just, was too much. But that can be regained, and it can be cultivated, and can be exercised, because the seeds always lie. It's like weeds, the idiots try to pull it out. As much as they try to pull it out, there's always a seed or a root or something, and it grows back, as long as we cultivate it. So this initiative to have it grow back is important. And so I believe we can discern two things here between there is intention, and intention comes from a mental consciousness type of deal, and there is desire, which is gut level and heart level. Actually, they both meet in the heart. Your intention basically is what you are intending to do, your life force spirit boost of mobilization. And your desire is magnetic. It's what your inner feeling soul vibrates in order to attract and draw in things toward you. One without the other is very, very weak, and usually one or the other in most people is crippled. So some people and spiritualists say, well, intention is good as long as you don't change anything, and as long as your intention is to leave Earth, and so you have to eliminate desire because that's really what's keeping you here. You really don't want to die. And on the other side, you have individuals who believe all intention is controlled, and so, they basically give in to what they believe are the desires, but their desires have no options but primal instinct once you remove the spirit from them. In other words, the intention part of our being is the angelic part. The desire part of our being is the animal part, and the human part can only exist when we bring them together. That is actually the gist of esoteric alchemy. It basically takes the spirit and purifies it. It takes the soul, the will, the desire aspect and purifies it, and then it brings them back together into a sacred marriage, and that opens the pillar of heaven on earth. And
yeah, we do need to wrap up. We're at 34
Yes.
minutes, and of course I'm going to take a minute off at the beginning, but...
Well, thank you for the notice.
So that you know.
Exactly. And basically, I am wrapped up. That's what I wanted to say. My conclusion was that notice your intention, notice your desire, and ask yourself, is this what I want? And bring the two together. Stand up and feel strong. Affirmations are not empty words, and they don't work if you just repeat words. The value of affirmation is in the feeling behind the word. You can even eliminate the affirmation, throw it out the window, and just keep the feeling if you can sustain that. And that is prayer. That is basically what works, what vibrates. So that's what I want to suggest. There's no need to say I can't do shit if I don't go through all of this process of awakening, of activating super abilities or whatever, or even hypnosis. I can do it in the here and now, and I can stand up, because when I stand up, I can view all of my horizons and everything that's in front of my face. Thank you for hearing me. That's all I wanted to say today.
Thank you, Aristo. Namaste. We'll talk to you again next Friday and for next Saturday's video. And I'm going to try to get this problem between VodBurner and Skype corrected so that it works right the first time without having to make several attempts like we did today and last week.
Oh, one more thing. Before I go, if you'd like, we can do a discussion next week on the videos that you mentioned with Karen Hudis or whatever. So, that'll just give me a chance to listen to the videos, and we can just talk about that if you like.
Okay, well, I'm going to do a video on her contribution, which will be my next video, which will air on Sunday.
Okay.
Because she's a tremendous force for truth right now, in my opinion, because of her credentials. So,
okay.
Anyway, thank you, Aristo.
Thank you, Ron. Till next time.
Yep.